Matt Murdoch is on the run for a crime he swears he didn't commit, but did he really? Well, let's hop into the pages of Daredevil issue number 2 and find out for ourselves, shall we? Alrighty then, so as this issue opens up, we check back on in with Detective Cole North, the hotshot cop from Chicago who has come to New York with plans of cleaning it up one case at a time. This dude is obsessive to say the least, and you'll recall in the previous issue I mentioned that they're drawing a lot of parallels between Cole and Matt Murdoch, and hey, wouldn't you know it, he's a boxer, go figure. Now, with no one else to turn to in this dark hour, Daredevil decides to look up Foggy Nelson once again. Daredevil assumes that the dead criminal from the previous issue has to have been some kind of setup, Kingpin framing him again. But he really isn't sure how to proceed. In a nice bit of continuity keeping here, Foggy says that maybe he should turn himself in. He can take the stand, defend himself, and he doesn't even have to unmask following the great ruling we got in the Soul Run. Ultimately, though, Matt refuses to trust any broken system, especially one that has the Kingpin setting atop it right now, and as such, he decides to hit the streets and try to clear his name. And hey, speaking of Kingpins and potential frame-ups, that's exactly where Cole and his partner Higgins are headed next. Wilson Fisk has barely met Detective Cole before he starts pulling out the whole, "We're not so different, you and I. We both hate masks. We both think justice should be done in a certain way." But once again, Cole makes it very clear that while he might not like people like Daredevil, he hates people like Kingpin even more. The truly crazy thing is that both Detective Cole and Daredevil himself both end up with the same conclusion, that if a crook died and Daredevil was blamed, surely Kingpin must be behind it. Only when the cops leave and Wesley asks if it was Wilson's doing, to Daredevil's shock and surprise, he's actually telling the truth when he says, "Nope, this one wasn't me, but you bet I'm dancing a happy jig over it all the same." Daredevil then begins to think maybe something happened at the coroner's office, and because of that he decides to interrogate a doctor, only to be surprised when he says, "Nope, the cause of death is exactly as it was written." That's pretty damn disheartening for our hero, but it's actually what the guy says next that really cuts to Matt's core. He says that he's patched up more than a few of the crooks that Daredevil has roughed up over the years. They were always hurt, but they always walked away too. Daredevil showed a great amount of care and control and restraint in his fighting style, but that was not here with the dead guy, implying that somewhere along the line Daredevil got reckless, he got sloppy. Maybe it had something to do with the pain pills and booze that he was double fisting in the previous issue, maybe. And heck, if we want to look at this canonically, this wouldn't even have been the first time Matt Murdoch accidentally killed someone while fighting crime. If we go all the way back to the Frank Miller era, that was pretty much tied into his whole origin story and why he chooses not to kill. All these new revelations lead Matt into one hell of a moral conflict, one that he hopes to appease by going to the church. His regular priest isn't there, but he does find a nun named Elizabeth, who is surprisingly not his mother, yet who I cannot shake the feeling that at some point in the writing was actually meant to be his mother. She doles out all the regular nuggets of Catholic wisdom, essentially breaking down to, hey, if you've done bad, you need to repent. But what does Daredevil do to repent? He messed up one person's lives, so he should hit the street and try and help other people's lives, yes? Only, much to Daredevil's chagrin, when he actually does hit the streets and does start fighting crime again with his super senses, he realizes that the people he's saving are just as scared of him as the criminals he's stopping. And really, that's only the beginning. If Joe and Jane's six-pack don't trust Daredevil anymore, how do his friends in the superhero community feel? Do they believe he's a killer? Do they believe he's reckless? Was this maybe the work of the Kingpin? Was this maybe the work of another mystery villain? All Matt knows for sure is that he really doesn't want to have to admit that this was his fault, because if it is, then his life just changed forever. Daredevil decides to go back to the scene of the crime to look for more clues, and hey, wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what Cole and the cops were waiting on. Now, in the old days, old Hornhead would have been able to give these guys the slip and do so in style, but maybe because Cole is really good or because Daredevil is going downhill, he actually ends up getting shot in a scuffle. And it's on that very dour note the comic comes to a close. So that was Daredevil issue number 2, everybody, and I gotta say, I'm enjoying what Chip Zdarsky is doing here. Daredevil is definitely one of those characters who gets his status quo radically shaken up every couple years when he starts getting too comfortable. He's like that in a lot of ways with Batman. In fact, I think you could draw a lot of parallels between what Zdarsky is doing here and what past writers have tried to do with Batman. Daredevil is getting too chummy with the greater superhero community as a whole. They need to pull him back a little bit from the larger scene, let him get back to basics, back to street level, back to being a grim, well, kind of Miller-era vigilante. That works, but I think the real secret weapon here is actually the character of Detective Cole North. He's set up to be a really interesting interesting foil to Matt himself. You also have Chichito's art, which is absolutely perfect for the material from start to finish. Overall, I'd give this one another very positive 8 out of 10. I'm liking this. Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cave Joel again. I want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed what you saw, and if you did, why not take a closer look at some of these other videos I have available from the channel. Then you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Cave Joel, so you're always up to speed on what I'm doing next. And hey, if you're in a supportive mood, why not check out my Patreon page? Patrons get exclusive access to videos and content before anyone else, and you can do so for as little as $1 a month. I would really appreciate it, and with that, I will be sure to be back again next time with even more great comic content that smacks of greatness. Bye-bye, everyone.